Welcome to The Maintenance Mindset, an audio-video podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Paul Rhodes, and over the more than 3 decades in the apartment industry, I've had roles that include being on-site, providing services as a vendor, creating and delivering multiple education programs, and active association work. This podcast is centered on the often overlooked role that our on-site maintenance workers play. You know, the men and women that respond in the middle of the night to the toilet call, or the after hours, it's really hot in my apartment request, or my favorite, my ring fell down the drain, get over here now. In other words, the often unsung heroes who are responsible for asset preservation and resident satisfaction. Working in multifamily maintenance provides interesting, sometimes amusing, and often fascinating stories and viewpoints. My encouragement to you is this: whatever you do it with a maintenance mindset. Congratulations! Happy New Year! You survived. You made it to 2025. Before you get involved in deciding exactly what you're going to do over the next day, week, month, year, so that you can determine that 2025 is going to be even better than 2024, I want you to pause just a second and, first of all, observe. You made it. Congratulations. You survived 2024, a very challenging year, had some highs, had some lows. My guess is some of the things you succeeded at, other things, not so much. Maybe they took a little bit more work, took longer. Maybe it was an utter failure. In the end, you wasted time, resources, money. There was a high turnover rate or a low turnover rate. Either way, good or bad, 2024 is in the books. It's in the past. 2025 is all in front of us. Yay, you. You made it this far. To come up with a plan for 2025, I have a proposal for you. As site leaders, the maintenance supervisor and the property manager, I want to offer an exercise for you to do which might help set up 2025 to be even more successful than 2024 was. Now, this exercise that we're going to do does require a couple of resources. The first resource is something to write on. Now, I'm a fan here lately of using an electronic tablet, e-ink tablet, but you don't have to have that technology. You could use a pad of paper, clipboard. You could even use your phone, use your computer. But what I would ask is that you take the time to document your thoughts. That's the first tool. Write it down. Even if you disagree with your partner, your fellow leader, write it down. That's going to do a couple of things. One, it will make your ideas, your thoughts, much more real than just what you pull off the top of your head. This also leads us to the second very important critical step, and that is, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here shortly. And those questions, I want you to consider alone at first. In other words, Mrs. Maintenance Supervisor, Mr. Property Manager, I would like for you to consider your answers separated from one another. Yes, Mr. Maintenance Supervisor or Miss Property Manager, whichever way it goes, you are an individual. You have the job that you have because of your experience, your knowledge, your viewpoint, your perspective. And your company, your owner, your employer wants that perspective. They need it. Together, you are better than your individual thoughts, but bring your individual thoughts to that together. So, first step, write down the questions I'm about to ask you, and then separate for a little while. And when I say a little while, I'm saying a couple of days. In other words, this exercise is best done when you can meditate on your answers to these questions. It's just 2 questions. That's it. Just 2 questions. And then there's one other question that after you think about these first 2 questions, you come together and discuss. And that's where the third question comes in. And by the end of our episode, I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to come up with ideas for 2025 and what that looks like. Oh, by the way, this does have a couple of rules for you. And these rules are important to know even before you know the questions, because these rules are going to frame your conversation and make sure that conversation is a safe place to discuss bad ideas, maybe even things that are not something normally considered. Because it's been my experience that when I'm trying to idea source things that are outside the box, some of those outside the box ideas are so awful and horrible that we should never, ever speak of them again. But having the freedom to speak of them in the first place can lead to some really innovative thinking. So these rules are critical. Having a safe space for bad ideas, in my mind, is important for new, good ideas to come to light. Which leads us, the very first rule that governs all the other rules for this particular methodology is zero blame. We're going to be looking back at 2024. And for this exercise, blame doesn't matter. Somebody's at fault. So what? Yeah, somebody did things wrong or could have made different choices. That's correct. I acknowledge that. I don't care. I mean, I care, but I really don't care for the context of this discussion, which leads us to the second. If nobody's going to take blame, nobody's going to take credit. Blame and credit in the bounds of this conversation are not what we're going for. That also means we don't give blame. We don't give credit either. 2024 happened. No matter who did it or who gets credit for it, it occurred. It's in the past, and we're looking to evaluate it in that light. No blame, no credit involved. It just occurred. Leads us to number 3, and this one is where we frame it. In other words, the reason why we're looking back is to take constructive action forward. That's the only reason we're looking back. I'm not looking back to spend this time of us analysis. This happened, then this occurred, then this chain link thing happened, then this cause made this effect. No, we're not going to spend a huge amount of time analyzing what happened, except when we need to discuss how those successes and failures can help us going forward. That way, we're looking forward towards positive movement. We're not going to get bogged down in analyzing what happened last year. The next thing is to understand, not only are we not taking credit or blame, we're looking to correct things. The next rule is the fact that we're all on the same team. And that means that in the realm of this particular discussion, we are both experts. Property manager, you are free to ask questions, bring insights, and bring ideas to the maintenance world. This is not the no person who doesn't have a screwdriver apply area. Likewise, maintenance supervisor, you are perfectly free to talk about what goes on in the office and ask questions about marketing. Why don't we do this? How come we don't come up with this idea? What if? All of that is perfectly acceptable and even encouraged. Remember, no blame. If it's a bad idea, we'll throw the bad idea out and nobody even gets the blame for coming up with the bad idea because, again, the frame here is to go forward. That leads me to the last rule of this conversation, of what's happening, and that is this is a conversation. And a conversation, when you have it, it's like playing ping pong. In other words, it's not a lecture. It's not the maintenance supervisor talking only to the property manager about how this one thing occurs. No, it's answering a question, maybe with a short piece of information, story, relationship, simile, or metaphor for context, and then the conversation goes back and forth. This is not a lecture from one direction or the other. These questions are to spur thought. And the whole purpose of this thought is to move forward into 2025, maybe trying some new ideas based on last year. Okay, so do you have those rules? Just a reminder, no blame, no credit. Analysis is only for what goes on to next steps. The fourth rule is the topic is the whole property and ping pong, not a lecture. So here's the questions. Take out your paper and pen. The first question, what was successful last year? Remember, no credit. I didn't do this. We did it. The property did it. What was successful? That's the first question. The second question I want you to answer is the antonym of that. In other words, what failed last year? What didn't work? That's it. Those are it. Those are the whole two questions. What worked and what didn't work? Now remember, the goal here, based on those rules, no blame, no credit, where analysis is only for next step thinking. The topic is the whole property and ping pong, not lecture. Got it? Okay, separate. In other words, maintenance supervisor, go somewhere else. Property manager, be separate. Do this over a couple of days. Write down some answers and then sleep on it. Do some work orders, do some leases, do some whatever is going on. Let time pass. And as time passes, at least once a day, possibly more, go back to your list and add to it. No idea is wrong. The reason why we want to have both of you looking at what worked and what didn't is, first of all, where each individual's and what I consider a success may not be seen as such by my counterpart. And if what I've done isn't as much of a success as what I thought it was, or what I didn't do, what I failed at, is not viewed as a failure, I need to hear that. That way we can both be on the same page and develop what it is we're doing. Now, what I want you to do is, as you're writing these down, prepare for the conversation that comes in place. And that preparation for the conversation that comes in place, that's going to occur by taking your answers and writing down your 3 best answers. 3 best answers at your property of what worked, and 3 best answers of at your property what didn't in 2024. Don't forget, this is more than what just happened in December. This is for the entire year. That's why I'm saying take a couple of days. Yeah, you may need to go back and look at emails, look at your calendar, look at budgeting, look at invoices, look at all of that in your time apart. But what I want you to do is come back with the 3 what you consider the biggest successes and the 3 what you consider the biggest failures. That means when you come back together, you each have 3 for a total of 6. Then, when you're back together, start out with this quote. This quote actually comes from author, guy by the name of Shane Parrish. He's got an email newsletter that I read every single week. It's called Farnham Street. And he's written a book called Clear Thinking, both of which are fantastic resources and great ways of going about changing your mind, changing what we end up doing. Because what we do at the property as leaders is we make decisions, and we need to make the best decisions we can in order for success to occur. In the end, that's what this exercise is all about. Now, Shane has a quote that is so profound, but yet, why didn't I think of it? Basically, what he says is, success is deceptively easy. Do more of what works and less of what doesn't. Okay, I know. If you're listening to this podcast and you're driving, keep both hands on the wheel. But everybody else, do me a favor. Take your palm and apply it to your forehead. Really? That simple? Yeah. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't, and that equals success. I know. It's that easy. But my personal quote, if I can quote myself, just because we say something is easy doesn't mean it's simple. Starting out this time, when the property manager and maintenance supervisor are sitting together, both of you have your lists. A total of 6 items are there. What I want you to do is share those items. Remember, it's ping pong, back and forth. Everyone share those items so we all end up on the same page. We have 3 items that worked last year and 3 items that didn't from the maintenance supervisor, 3 items that worked last year and 3 items that didn't from the property manager. When we put them both together, we've got 6 items. Rank them. I want you to take what in your mind out of those 6 was the biggest success and what out of those 6 was the biggest failure. Again, no blame. We're looking for just honest evaluation. No credit, just honest look back, best and worst. Then what I want you to do is take the top 2 of each category. In other words, you're going to discard the 4 items. You now have 4, 2 things that succeeded last year, 2 things that failed last year. And what that means is we're going to look. Those 2 things that succeeded, do more of that. The 2 things that failed last year, you know what? Maybe we need to change those. Do less of that. What does it take to do less of that? Now, because I am maintenance guy, I think maintenance, I'm going to offer some suggestions for ways of doing less of what failed last year. We're going to get to those right after we take this short break.
Hey there. I'm Paul Rhodes from the Maintenance Mindset podcast, and today I have something a little bit different for you, and that is a little bit of personal philosophy. See, I live life by 3 rules. 2 of those rules are emblazoned on my dining room wall. My wife made a quilted wall hanging that have 2 of those rules on them because the 3rd rule is enforced all the time. The first 2 might be optional. You see, it's the 3 rules of coffee. Rule number 1 says, life is too short for bad coffee. Rule number 2, bad coffee is better than no coffee. Because of rule number 3, which is always in force, no coffee, no worky. I believe in coffee. Matter of fact, I just about always have a cup nearby that is full of that wonderful, velvety, fantastic elixir of life. The reason why I'm talking to you about this today is we now have the Multifamily Media Network Grounds for Connection coffee. And if you haven't tried this yet, I can tell you from experience, it is definitely rule number one coffee. This stuff is fantastic. It's a mixture of beans from Central America, South America, and Indonesia. It definitely has a chocolatey note to it that is the fantastic way I use to stay caffeinated. And it's not Rule 2 coffee, because remember Rule 3, no coffee, no working. So if you're a late night maintenance team member who has to be up either early or way later than what you want, the next day, do yourself a favor. Get yourself a bag of Grounds for Connection from the Multifamily Media Network website. Thank you for your attention and have a caffeinated day.
So there you have it. You've now used 2024 as a method to come up with your strategy for 2025. The next steps is figure out what the next steps are. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you had a fantastic time listening. Have a great rest of your month and the year of 2025. Now, with your 2 things to do more of and the 2 things to do less of. I'll see you somewhere.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Maintenance Mindset. I hope you take away ideas that apply to your current and future career goals. Please check out Maintenance Mindset Minute to hear short-form, high-impact, applicable, maintenance-centered information. Whatever you do today, do it with a maintenance mindset. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. I'll see you somewhere.